brought forth.
Okay, fine.
What? Yeah.
Then all you got to do is read the Quran for yourself. Don't listen to my interpretation of it.
Yeah.
You read it for yourself, and then you read the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and you decide, Muhammad or Jesus, or neither.
I think neither is probably the more logical approach. Simply
Good.
because
I'm so glad you're so logical. So what's the answer that you would give to the question, who or what are you living for, and what's the evidence, this overwhelming evidence that whatever it is you live for and believe in is true?
First thing is that born and raised, I'm an atheist.
Yep.
Like, I have never had faith in a higher power during my life.
Right?
I do not have faith in the Bible as a source. What proof do you have outside of that?
Good. The first piece of evidence, not proof, but the first piece of evidence that points me to God is order and design do not come out of chaos by chance.
Right.
Order and design point to some type of intelligent mind.
Biology student myself.
Yes.
I'm a firm believer in kind of principles of evolution.
Good.
That kind of thing.
Let me just hop quickly on though.
Yeah.
Where is the creative mechanism in evolution? Because I believe in evolution as a process, but where is the creative mechanism in evolution?
I don't think I fully understand the question, but
How do you get something from nothing in evolution?
the thing is that it didn't come from nothing. I forgot what the exact title of the experiment, but there is this idea that the primordial soup, right?
Yeah.
The oceans of a primordial Earth.
Right. Sir, I think we can bring this one to a conclusion fairly quickly. I am convinced that before the Big Bang, there was nothing.
Right.
Okay, and that's what Einstein acknowledged. And that's why Einstein tried to beat the Big Bang mathematically. And he introduced a fudge factor to try and prove that the Big Bang was not true. Because Einstein understood, if the Big Bang is true, my pantheism, which means everything is God, is wrong. There's a creator. Because everything that has a beginning has a cause. The universe has a beginning, therefore the universe has a cause, and it's far more reasonable to believe in the beginning an intelligent mind caused it than to believe nothing caused it.
Right.
And that's philosophically unacceptable. Bang! What caused that? Nothing. That is stupidity. Rank stupidity. Everything that has a beginning has a cause. The universe has a beginning, therefore the universe has a cause. What is the best answer to the question, who caused the universe?
In that case, it would be God, right?
Yeah, God is the most reasonable explanation.
Then what is our explanation for the beginning of God?
Great question. It is idolatry to think God has a beginning. Because the God who has revealed himself through Jesus Christ has revealed himself as eternal. So when I begin to say, well, who created God? It means I don't understand who God has revealed himself to be. Nobody created God because God does not have a beginning. Remember, I didn't say everything has a cause. I said everything that has a beginning has a cause. God is eternal, so God does not have a cause. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and in that case, that's kind of my view for, well, existence itself without a creator. Because God does not have a cause,
Right.
and, well, we exist, so how is it so much more to believe that existence itself does not have a cause?
Because existence cannot come out of non-existence.
But God can.
No, God doesn't come out of anything. See, there's nothing before God that God comes out of, because God is eternal. No beginning, no end. But everything that has a beginning, like this guy and me, there's got to be a cause for him and me, because we definitely have a beginning. And we're getting a little older, so we're not going to be around a lot longer, okay? But we have a beginning, which means there's got to be a cause for this dude and for this dude. Make sense?
Of course.
Good. Well, I thank you for that, okay? All right, now quickly, let's just go through some other pieces of evidence of why we believe God exists.
Of course.
Moral absolutes. I'm convinced to the root of my being that if this guy pulls out a knife and sticks it in your body,
Right.
that is absolutely wrong, because this man is violating your value.
Of course.
Now, the only way you can have value is if someone created you. Because if nobody created you, you just happened by accident. Which means any value you have is either you gave it to yourself, or I gave it to you and some powerful people, or your culture did.
Right.
Right?
And-
But I would argue that it's still relative. The reason I'm convinced that if he sticks a knife into you, it's evil, is because you have innate value that comes from your creator, who created you for a purpose and who really loves you. Third one is moral absolutes, objective morals pointing to some type of creator. Fourth one is this: your rational mind. Does it come from the non-rational, or does it come from the rational? An atheist is someone who says, my rational mind comes from the non-rational. I can't... That doesn't make any sense. The rational comes from the rational. The rational does not come from the irrational, which is why, not that I've proven God, but it's evidence that it's more reasonable to say we come from God, not that we come from the non-rational.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I believe so. Define the rational and the non-rational. I don't think I understand where we come from.
All right. You have the ability, and hopefully I have the ability, to think rationally. All right? That is why, if I make a rational mistake, you're going to look me in the face and say, Cliff, that makes no sense.
Right.
That's irrational. Okay, my ability to think rationally comes from rational being. It doesn't come from this. This has no ability to rationalize. Neither does that tree.
Of course.
But you and I do. So is it more reasonable to think that our ability to reason comes from a rational being, God, or is it more reasonable to believe that our rational talent comes from the non-rational, just from matter and energy?
This is difficult for me because I just see us on different wavelengths, honestly. Like, we do believe different things. Apparently.
Yes, we believe different things.
And
You'll be next.
just for these pieces of evidence, I see these coming from not a higher power, but from necessity. From necessity.
Well, what does that mean?
Because, say, coming from my point of view, every piece of a human comes from a piece of evidence. Like, every piece of a human is part of necessity and gives someone more chance of survival. So, say our morality. I see you didn't like that. Say morality. If he were to stab me, say we're part of the same tribe.
Yeah?
Ancient human.
Yeah?
If he were to stab me while we were out, say, gathering berries, he can't. The tribe has lost a member.
Yeah?
We can't have as many berries now, and he can't carry back as much food. Perhaps now, even then, my parents are going to be mad at him, and the tribe breaks apart. Like, equals less survival and less humans.
Maybe. Does rape help the human experiment continue?
No.
Yes, it does. Rape can produce babies.
Yes, but
Survival of the fittest. Why should I not steal his backpack? If survival of the fittest is true, why should I not steal his backpack?
Well, the thing is that you're part of the same tribe.
So what?
We're part of the same society. That doesn't benefit anybody. If you are of different tribes, that isn't necessarily immoral, at least in the human perspective.
No. If what you say is true, then if I want to be part of a gang, and the gang says, in order to be part of our tribe, our gang, you gotta go out and murder. Does that make me going out and murder good?
No,
Thank you.
because that's unnecessary murder of people in the same city, the same tribe.
No. I want to be part of a gang, which is a tribe, a family. And in order to be part of a gang, they're telling me I gotta go out and murder. My desire to be part of a tribe, the tribe defining good and evil. Is that really objective morality? Does that really make it good because the tribe says it's good?
No.
Thank you. Which is why you and I need to acknowledge God exists, because God's character, which is just, defines murder as being wrong. I don't care what gang or what tribe or what nation, be it Nazi Germany or whatever, says it's good. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So I need to move on to another person, but I cannot thank you enough for your respectful thinking, and I appreciate it a lot.
What to somebody that doesn't have faith?
Yeah.
What is a rational justification for it? And I want to clarify.
Yep.
I understand like utility in something like that.
Yes.
Like if it gives somebody purpose or
Yes.
like guide somebody through their life. So I'm not really looking for like a utility argument.
Right.
I'm talking more about like in a logical way, like somebody that doesn't have faith. Like
Yes.
the way I see it is similar to like somebody that might practice some kind of holistic treatment or like holistic medicine or something.
Yeah.
That might not technically work,
Yeah.
but it might enrich their life still because of like maybe placebo effect or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
So like in that sense, they
Yes.
might think like this is a good thing. Other people should try this.
Yeah.
But other people that might already know that this thing doesn't work, it's
Right.
not going to work for them. So
Okay.
why, if somebody doesn't have faith, why should they have faith?
Okay, good. If someone does not have faith, why should they have faith? Everybody has faith. Why? Because you have to answer the question. You have no choice. Why am I valuable? Why is he valuable? Why is she valuable? And however you answer that question, you can't prove it.
Well, I don't think anyone has in like. I think, well, the thing with faith is we all have faith to some extent. Like, we all have
Yes.
faith in, like, systems
Yeah.
that we set up.
Yeah.
But we also have foolproofs to these systems that sometimes fail. But we try to construct these things in a way that, like, we acknowledge that there could be shortcomings here. Whereas, like, a faith in a God that we have no evidence for is, like, it is blind. And that's kind of the point of it. Is like,
Come on now. Did you not listen to me answer him? He asked me, why do you believe in the supernatural?
Uh-huh.
And I gave him 4 pieces of evidence, and I could have kept going.
I would love to hear
Right.
them.
Order and design demand an intelligent mind, a designer.
Okay.
The universe has a beginning, therefore the universe has a cause.
Okay.
Okay? What is the best answer to the explanation? Who or what caused
Right.
this amazingly beautiful ordered universe?
I,
Thirdly, moral absolutes point to a moral lawgiver. All right? Fourthly, rational thinking points to the fact that we do not come from the non-rational, we come from the rational.
yeah.
Reason does not come from non-reason. This brick has no ability to produce rational thought.
Okay.
All right? Those are 4 pieces of evidence I just gave him about why I believe God exists.
I guess, okay, to narrow my point a little bit, the question of God is a tough one because I can't disprove it and I don't have any strong feelings on the matter. I'm more so talking about a specific, like a Christian God.
Right.
I heard your partner talk earlier about, it was honestly, it to me it kind of came off as not the word, I guess, a little rhetorically dishonest in the way that he loaded words such as like historical document, bringing up things like footnotes. I mean, there are communities in America today that think leprechauns exist, and like when we think about a time where there is bad accounting for things,
Yeah.
they're like it's basically one person's writing.
Yeah.
Word probably spreads a lot, like pretty quickly, of things that aren't true. People
Right.
think like witches are real, burn people.
Yes.
Right. So we're putting a lot of faith.
Keep going, I'm listening.
Yeah, in faulty evidence and a book that has in its best interest to
Yep.
convince people, and I'm
Yes.
supposed to like immediately believe this in this book. And he was saying that it was unprecedented how there was such a big surge in Christian followers, right? That like would go to strengthen the validity of Christianity. But I don't know why you can't just hold the same.
That was not his point.
The point was that like something would have had to catalyze that. Something that would have
Yeah,
to
there was
happen.
a catalyst. Something
Right.
happened.
Right,
And all
but
of a
I don't
sudden,
necessarily think there had to
thousands
be-
of Jews put their faith in Christ.
Uh-huh.
And then he I listened to him closely
Yeah,
because
I
I'm
did too.
with you. I don't
Yeah.
want any verbal gains.
Yeah.
He said, "What is the most reasonable explanation of this explosion of Jews putting their faith in Jesus?"
Yeah.
That's all he said. Do you have a problem with that?
Yeah, well, I
What's
have
the
a
problem?
problem with the insinuation that the most reasonable explanation is a supernatural one. I think it's entirely possible that, in the same way that any philosophical movement throughout time rises, like the Enlightenment or something, where a particular way of thinking becomes popular because maybe there's like a piece of literature that comes out at the time,
Yes.
a piece of art that might sway people in one direction or another.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that it has to be like born of a supernatural thing, and I don't know why you can't hold the same candle to something like Islam. Like, if you were to ask,
do.
well, right. So why is Christianity more valid than something like Islam? Why should I believe in Christianity over another Abrahamic religion or
Well,
a
very
religion
simple.
that's not Abrahamic?
Because you read the Quran, you ask yourself, Does the evidence of the way Muhammad lived, treated people, the evidence of what he taught, the evidence of how he died and what happened after his death, does that point to Muhammad being reliable? And I would say in some senses, yes. I certainly respect, give alms to the poor that Muhammad teaches. But when you look at Jesus Christ and see that he's sinless, he taught the Sermon on the Mount, amazing ethical teachings. He dies forgiving his enemies, and then he rises from the dead. The grave of Muhammad is full. The grave of Jesus Christ is empty. It's his historical resurrection from the dead that sets Christ apart as different.
Okay.
And I would argue more reliable. If I die and rise from the dead, I have a hunch you'll listen very carefully to all I have to say. I certainly will do that for you. You die and rise from the dead, I will listen very carefully to what you have to say.
Right. I would say if I were to, I have to be wary of my own ignorance in a lot of this because
So do I.
You are obviously more knowledgeable in the minutia of like something like the Bible.
Yeah, but Einstein said I know less than 1% of all there is to know.
Right.
So I obviously know very, very little part of all of reality.
Like
very
I think
little.
if I were to have a long, fruitful conversation with an Islamic scholar, I think I could be swayed in that direction as well. I think there's a big factor here where you are probably very well read in the Bible, probably very well read in like scholarly articles or like surrounding this topic, and I think that like from that there probably comes an indirect bias against like other kinds of information that might be brought forth.
Okay, fine.
What? Yeah.
Then all you got to do is read the Quran for yourself. Don't listen to my interpretation of it.
Yeah.
You read it for yourself, and then you read the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and you decide Muhammad or Jesus or neither.
I think neither is probably the more logical approach. Simply
Good. I'm so glad you're so logical. So what's the answer that you would give to the question, who or what are you living for, and what's the evidence, this overwhelming evidence that whatever it is you live for and believe in is true?
what I live for and believe in. What I live for is like I have things that I'm passionate about, and that provides value and purpose to my life. I don't think that there necessarily has to be like a higher power creator that's giving us inherent value.
What do you
me
live
to
for,
enjoy
and what's the
life.
evidence that it's reliable?
What do I live for?
Yeah, what are you living for?
I was born, and I enjoy the life that I was given, and so I continue to live. And the struggles that I face and the things that I experience that I enjoy give me reason to want to continue going that way. And I don't need like a higher power to look towards to motivate me towards something else. And anyway, like I would say,
so that
the higher
means
power in
you're
my
living for
hierarchical
yourself.
structure- Yeah.
You live for yourself. What's the evidence that you are more reliable than Jesus Christ?
The evidence that I'm more reliable than Jesus Christ is like we have to go off of our own. It's kind of presuppositionalism where like I know I exist and I can perceive things, and I understand that like we can like break that down at a philosophical level and
We
like
sure can.
well, you don't exactly know that,
Right.
But I do know it better than something that I never witnessed
Right.
and like never.
Good, and I know
there's
I
no
exist.
actual like.
I know
like,
I
hard
exist.
evidence.
But guess what? I'm a very fickle, very finite person.
I agree, and I don't think God.
When I
needs
look
to
at
exist to
Jesus
know that.
Christ, I see an amazing standard of ethics he teaches, and then he lives up to that standard in a way that I've tried but have failed. I have failed at it. I've tried really hard, and I've blown it. I'm a sinner. Christ didn't sin. That's why to trust him is wise.
I think we all construct a higher power in our lives, regardless of whether or not we believe in a God. I think we can all strive for something better. I think we have our own models. We can all strive for something better. I think literature is a good example of this. Like when we create like literary characters, these are things that teach us about ourselves and expand our consciousness. I don't think there necessarily needs to be a Jesus Christ figure. Jesus Christ, I think I see him more as a literary kind of character that we can like learn from, but I don't think he needs to be as idealized in reality as he has been for it to be valuable. And I think the thing with like a higher power, we all construct that in our life. A higher power for somebody might be like their passion for a certain thing that gives them purpose, and that's their higher power, and that God fulfills that role for a lot of other people. But I just don't think that alone is like proof of anything. I think that's just proof that we as humans have an innate desire to strive towards something, and God was created to fulfill that void in the human like need in that need that humans have.
And it's fascinating because about 8% of the world is atheistic. And that's going to decrease, Pew Research shows and sociologists claim, in the coming years. And Christianity and Islam are spiking. In the next few years, it's supposed to be 65% of the US is Christian and Islam. In the world, Christianity is by far and away the largest worldview, but Islam is catching it. And so through immigration and other ways, this nation will grow greatly in Christianity as well as Islam. So I always struggle with why so many have said, like even John Lennon in 1966, even Newsweek magazine back in the 60s talked about, even Nietzsche said, God is going to die, God is in the process of dying, and as we get more scientific and technological and smarter, everybody's just going to become atheistic, religion will go away. Why has that not occurred? And it might be.
It is.
It might be. No, it's not.
There is a.
The world is becoming much more religious than secular. That is proven statistically.
But what do you mean by religious? Because you guys seem to have a very interesting definition of religion, where like there is somebody is not technically Christian if they're not following the values of somebody like Jesus Christ. How can we even say that this person is like actually religious, or are they just doing it because it was part of their like upbringing or something?
Yeah.
And I think I am kind of forced to believe the statistics you're saying, because I don't want to be that guy that pulls the phone out in the middle of the conversation and looks it up. But
I'll just say my sources: Pew Research and the Washington Times and the New York Times.
The interesting part of that, though, is I'd have to actually read that, because there's a lot of context that usually goes into the analysis of data. You can't look at raw data. There's often a lot of context.
Well, bro, just look at it. Excuse me for interrupting. Just look at India. It's all Hindu. It's not growing in atheism. Atheism is 65% of atheists are white male.
Yeah.
And atheism, every single atheistic conference is in the West.
Yeah.
You go to Africa, you go to Latin America, you go to China, you go to Taiwan, you go to South Korea, you find me some atheists.
Right.
Good luck.
But if anything,
atheism is not spreading. Atheists try and convert more people than any other religion I know.
Yeah.
Whenever I'm debating an atheist, they are strongly trying to convert me, more so than I'm trying to convert them, which I find is hilarious, because if no God exists, and if religion, especially Christianity, is not deleterious and harmful to the human race, why are they trying so hard to convert me? And specifically to your point, you keep getting at this idea of a higher power, and let's just all kind of agree on a higher power if it works for you. Look, I'm in full agreement with that, but the whole thing that we're talking about out here is don't come to Christianity if it works for you. Come to Christianity if it is the truth, and if it's not the truth based off of evidence, discard it. Live by humanistic values, which are the fumes of the Judeo-Christian faith, which I bet you are probably living out of. So you are probably living as a Christian, but rejecting Christianity.
Like, it's just basic morals that like if you look at the utility of why something like the Bible would be created, it would be to reflect the already existing human morals of the society at the time. I also think what you said earlier oddly kind of proved my point for me, where you were talking about countries in the world that are growing in their religious fervor.
Yes, it's cool.
These are part of the world that are less developed. Like, these are parts of the world that like are
China. China has over 100 million. I'm pretty sure technology and science in China is growing rather rapidly. And the intellectuals themselves, it's fascinating you go here, because there was a group of intellectuals. So I just had a little caffeine. Am I speaking too loudly? I'm going to bring it down.
What's the per capita GDP in a place like China then?
China, but the problem, bro, the problem right now is you're trying to equate atheism and scientific knowledge together and all other religions as the IQ is lower, and it's just part of slavish societies. First of all, that is tremendously elitist and tremendously offensive to those who are religious. And secondly, any type of intellectual, cumulatively, I'm talking about cumulative studies, show that Christians and atheists have the same level of IQ, and specifically Anglicans, oddly enough, that denomination, has a higher level of IQ than atheists in the typical Christian denomination.
Interesting that you talk about IQ. I think it's a little bit of a straw man. I didn't mention it.
Okay, that's not where you're going?
Well, what I was specifically talking about was developing countries where there is less resources for education, meaning that like like people that might have higher IQ might instead of be going to like a college or something, might be going to a Quran study class or something,
Sure.
where like the whole country is based upon religion and it's ingrained into their law.
Sure.
And I think like you say China in jest, but yes, China is a less developed country. I mean, the wealth inequality in a place like China, it spits in the face of even America. It's like it's unreal. Like most of China is rural, and in those places, these people don't have good like access to education. Same in places like India. These places that you talk about where religious fervor is growing are literally in places where people have less access to education.
Stalin himself said this. If Christianity, one of the main pillars of American society, is swept away, that country will fall apart.
Yeah.
And the growth of secularism in this country, if it continues to grow, even though statistically, fortunately, it will not, like I stated, this place will fall in on itself.
Okay.
Because you absolutely have to have moral standards and you have to have an objective purpose in life. Because on this campus, why is it 50% clinical anxiety? Why is there 25% high depression? Why are suicide rates skyrocketing? Why are 54% of marriages divorcing? It has a lot to do with
The divorce rates.
what am I living for, and why am I entering a relationship that I'm supposed to be committed to?
I'm willing to adapt to information. If compelling evidence of a Christian God were to come out, I would. That would be amazing. That'd be great.
Well, and that's you're straw manning us, because we're not saying this is the absolute. If somehow evidence came out and there was an ossuary and we found Jesus Christ's bones, I would have to stop believing in Christ because he wasn't raised from the dead. So it's a little presumptuous and quasi-offensive, and I'm not that offended, for you to say we have this objective authoritarian truth and we are not budging on it. But you over here, hey, I'm waiting for more, I'm discovering things, and this is me. Is that not the greatest assertion and the greatest form of spiritual dogmatism in terms of what you claim to be the truth? I think it is. You're worshiping the search. That's a worshiping position.
Spaceless, timeless, and unchanging.
Yes.
How is his existence different from a principle? How do we say he's personal?
Good. Very good. All right. You have friends, right? I have friends. We are personal. Meaning by that, we are capable of loving each other, trusting each other, building friendships, aren't we? All of us can do that. Where does that come from? Oh, there's no God, some people say, which means, to be consistent, it comes from matter and energy, which means you believe that the personal comes from the impersonal. What a joke. What an absolute joke. This brick has no personal qualities. This tree has no personal qualities. You can't have a friendship with a tree. You can't have a friendship with a brick. It takes a personal being with a mind, a free will, the ability to love that you can build a relationship with. So the question becomes, where does your personal ability come from? It doesn't come from that brick. It doesn't come from that metal, and it doesn't come from that tree. It comes from a personal God who creates you with the innate ability to have consciousness and to be personal. And if you say there is no God, what you're telling me is, no. The personal comes from the impersonal. The ability to love comes from matter and energy. Hogwash. Baloney. That is so irrational, it's scary. Is that science? No. That's philosophy we're using, not science.
The decision to create moral absolutes and then the opportunity for us to understand that there are moral absolutes, obligations, and duties. I mean, what is more likely? That there's randomly just this principle, it's Platonism in many ways, this Platonic principle, or that there is a creative mind that actually put in place these principles of goodness, evil, right, wrong,
why you should do this, why you should not do this. And then ultimately, this, whether it's a principle or a personal being, I would say only a personal being can make the decision to say, this is ultimately Damien, this is ultimately Cameron, what is right and wrong. It's not just this principle up here, came from nothing, and ultimately it was decisionlessness, if we can say, that somehow created what was right and wrong. No, you need a person to say, this is right and wrong, now I'm going to give you the ability to understand what is right and wrong. Now, every single person that I encounter would desire a relationship with a personal God. Trust me, when you're at a deathbed of somebody, you don't just want to say, you're part of God, even your death and the demise, it's all part of God, I'm sorry. No, you want a personal God who actually can get in touch with your suffering because he sent his only son to suffer in the worst type of way imaginable at that time, which was going to a cross. The Roman Empire were absolutely murderous and just figured out creatively how to inflict the most pain upon a criminal or somebody who claimed to be God. And that's what they did to Jesus Christ. So when I'm talking with somebody, they want a personal God, and they feel like there has to be a personal God out there if a personal God truly exists or if any God exists. And so getting in touch with and figuring out, is that tree over there really part of God and God? Is there a God that only says, submit to me, and that's it? Or is there a God of love? Is there a God of love? And if there's a God of love, that God has to be personable. Or like Cliff was saying, that God can't love.
Why is being a biochemical being necessarily a bad thing? If we are just, organisms, we still have our own morality, and as a society, we can have these broader ideas of love and passion, which aren't necessarily scientifically proven, without the need for appealing to a God for our morality. Why is that a bad thing just if we are biochemical?
Okay, I've miscommunicated. Your biochemistry is very, very important. Your physical body is crucial. And if there's a biochemical mix-up in your brain, please go to a good psychiatrist to allow him to get the chemicals balanced. And if you have cancer, please respect that fact. Go to a good doctor and have him give you whatever it takes to get rid of that cancer. So I'm sorry, we did not mean to communicate that the biochemical is unimportant. No, it's very important, all right? But what we're saying is, if you reduce her to just her body, her biochemical responses, the chemicals in her brains, you have not told the whole story. She has a soul. She has a free will. She has the ability to love and hate. She has motives. She has ambitions. She chooses how to treat her enemy. She chooses how to treat people of different races. She chooses what she does with her sexuality. She has a soul. She's not just a biochemical machine. Does that make sense?
Sure, but I just don't understand why you need God to prove those things.
Okay, good. If there is no God, how can she have a soul? An intangible free will. How can that exist if there is no God?
I mean, you're describing the concept of what we understand as soul, but it can be a biochemical thing that naturally occurs. You're just attributing a supernatural reason to it. And it could just be the way we try to grasp concepts that are too hard to explain.
Sir, if you limit all of reality to matter and energy, how can there be something beyond matter and energy, this intangible thing we call love? Does this brick have any ability to love? No. Does this tree have any ability to love? No. But if there is no God, what you're telling me is there's no spiritual being, there's no personal being, there's simply matter and energy. Fine, I hear you. But what you're telling me is I'm limiting reality to the physical, matter and energy. Well, how do you get love and free will if I'm just a complex biochemical reaction right here? See, if I'm just a complex biochemical reaction, then I don't love her. I treat her the way my chemicals program me to treat her. And if I slap him, I didn't have a choice. My chemical reactions in my brain program me to slap him. But if I have a soul, a free will, the ability to love, if I'm a personal being, then I can choose to slap him, or I can choose to take out my wallet and give him money for lunch. I don't have to do either. You see, sir, my experience of life is I can hate him, I can love him. I can smack him, or I can give him a $20 bill for lunch. I don't have to do either. And my experience of free will convinces me there is more to me than just a chemical reaction here. What do you say to the man who said, I had to date rape her? I have such a high testosterone level that I had to date rape her. Do you agree with him? Why not? If he tells you the reason I date rape is because I have a very high testosterone level, why do you not believe him?
Well, for their society, as a society, we acknowledge that rape is wrong and it's immoral, so it should not be done. But again, you don't need religion to know that it's immoral to rape someone. So.
Yeah. And as a society, Nazi Germany said we're going to gas Jews. And as a society, white South African society said we're going to denigrate black people. And as a society, the United States at the time of the Dred Scott decision said black folks are 3/5 the value of white folks. And as a society, cannibalistic societies eat people. Are you sure that you really believe that my decision to freely love him or hate him is simply a result of my society conditioning me?
Society isn't always right, but neither is religion. And Christianity, Islam, any major religion has been used in the name of killing millions of people. In the same way society changes, so does religion. And as time has gone on, you try to interpret more of the good things to a religion, but you have to also acknowledge that how much horrible things have happened.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Because I have a free will, I can take someone as good as Jesus Christ and use Christ to justify my racism, my hatred of him. Why is that? Because Christ said racism is good? No. Because Christ said hating him is good? No. But because I have a free will. And because I have a free will, I can play all types of intellectual gymnastics and get to the point where I use Jesus Christ to justify racism, hatred, denigrating another person. It says nothing about Jesus Christ. It tells you a lot about my free will and who I am as a person. Does that make sense? Stuart, what do you think?
Well, do you believe that DNA, that cellular activity, came from just a primordial soup? There is no evidence that a cell has come, especially an information-producing cell, has come from this type of soup that we talk about, and that we ultimately came from it as well. Secondly, do you believe that a DNA, a cell can create a protein? It has the informational power to create a protein? Okay, there's no evidence for that either. Scientists are still guessing how in the world does this come about. Do you believe that that nice lady over there who's looking at the menu about to order, do you believe she's looking at that menu and just seeing from a materialistic perspective that there is no God? She's just seeing the ink blots and the physical menu? Because if that's true, then there is no God and there is no information and there is no ability to actually have a type of transference between a mind and the information on that very menu. You have to have an immaterial process of gaining that information. But if it's just a materialistic universe, it's just the ink blots and it's just the plastic right there on that menu. So a God that you get in John chapter 1, the Word, where you get the Trinity, the Word became flesh, a language and informational God. God speaks things into existence. Everything about your existence has to do with language and passing on information. We're doing that right now. You're going to be doing that all day in class with classmates. That is immaterial. How, from a materialistic perspective and point of view, can you get to the point of saying there's an immaterial type of information passing on. It makes way more sense if there's a creative mind that is immaterial, that is God, that is a language-producing being, a creative mind to give us this opportunity to connect through language and passing on information.
But, I mean, but the things you said, like seeing and understanding things in the mind, like science has proven, like there's places in the brain that percept those senses and try to compute what it is, what's going on. That's how our brain works. And some people's brains aren't able.
Sorry, can you speak a little louder?
So okay, and
Yeah.
some people's brains aren't able to compute those things correctly. That's why some people
Right.
are colorblind
Right.
against certain colors.
Right.
So by your logic, you're saying that in between understanding, seeing something, God somehow put this person with a lesser than interpretation of the world, or it's just their brain and mutations in our DNA, out of a lot of it pure randomness, just led someone to be colorblind. Isn't that just science already proves like our comprehension and how it works in the brain?
Yeah, but there's no initial mechanism that starts this whole process. And science would say we came from nothing, or Heidegger talks about how we were just thrown here out of nowhere. So how do you have this incredible creative process that even got to the point of producing a type of colorblindedness? How do you get that? And then you sound like it's morally wrong. Why is that wrong? Some people are colorblind, some are not. Some people have mental illness, some don't. Morally, from an evolutionary perspective, that's not wrong. Actually, they're just part of the weak. And maybe we should annihilate them so the strong can just get stronger and the society should just get better. So yes, I'm aware of stories like Phineas Gage and others who you probably have all read about. The spike going through his prefrontal lobes on that train track. And what occurred? He went from a very nice townsman who many people knew to nasty and mean. His personality totally changed. So yes, I believe we have a physical brain, but we also have a mind to make decisions with. We have a personhood that is beyond just your physical, moist robot. See, if you're going to be consistent as an atheist or whatever you are, if there is no God, then you have to go about saying that there's no real me, there's no real self that's innate. There's just my brain, physical brain, and there's just my physical makeup and my body. And that's great. That's a large leap of faith you're taking, but maybe that's right. And so what even explains the colorblindedness even more is you're saying that morally, and the suffering piece of that, is not right. But God did not create that. A messed up world created that. Entropy created that. Our own free will. 90% of the evil that we see and suffering we see is from our free will as free agents, not just mechanical moist robots if there is no God, determined to do these things or determined to have these types of outputs of color blindedness. No, I'm well aware that you have oxytocin, you have endorphins, you have serotonin, you have all different types of cortisol and neurochemicals in your brain. That makes sense. That's creative. That's incredibly complex. But you know, sir, that you have something beyond just a brain. You know that love is not just created by oxytocin and serotonin and the endorphins you get when you just go on a date for the first time and you have these lovey-dovey feelings. You know it's beyond that. I hope you know it's beyond that, because when you get a wife and you go home one day from work and you say, well, my love for you is simply the oxytocin right now determined in my brain. That's all it is. And that could change tomorrow. It has nothing to do with me and my own sacrifice and loving you and going to do the dishes and serving you in that kind of way. That doesn't really exist. If you're going to be a consistent atheist, that's how you got to be thinking.
I guess there's that answer.
Big question.
What does the Bible say about abortion?
Great question. All right, so in the early Roman Empire, what Christians were doing was abortion was too risky. So there was very little medical practice going on with abortion. What they were doing was they were taking 6-month, 1-year-old, 2-year-old babies and infants off burn piles that were just thrown there as typically girls. It was the handicapped. They were on burn piles. And so Christians were going and saving those lives, adopting those kids, bringing them into the church, and giving them an opportunity to actually understand that they have self-worth, that their parents were wrong in aborting them or just throwing them on dump heaps to be burned to death. So the Bible from the very beginning says every single human being at the very start of conception has innate value created in the image of God. So many Christians would say, well, in the Old Testament, you have even, you knit me together in my mother's womb. So a lot of pro-lifers will say that. Well, that's poetry, and I agree with that as well. Everything in the Bible uplifts, and the earliest Christians understood every single person, handicapped, slave, Samaritan, Jew, has innate worth. So do whatever you can in sacrificing to help that beautiful person. What do you think about abortion?
I mean, personally, I'm against it because, like my religion. But I mean, I know, like, a lot of people say, like, I mean, males don't even have a say, really. Like, what if, I mean, they bring up kind of some circumstances like rape or if the mother's gonna die or if the baby's gonna come out with, like, an illness.
Right.
And, I mean, although, like, those circumstances are understandable, but I mean, I just wanted to know, like, how the Bible would see those.
Amy Schumer did a comedy skit where when she was pregnant, she said, you know what? If me and my husband want to take a vacation to Italy in 4 months, I can just get rid of this thing. I mean, it's just in the way of my vacation time. Now, she was making fun of that type of thinking. I believe she's pro-choice, and yet she sees the nastiness, the contradictory nature of that, because she knows this baby is it's more than just a clump of chemicals and cells. Because if it is that, then yeah, discard it. It's simply like getting a haircut. It's the same thing as the hairs that fall off your head. It's the same thing as picking your calluses, like Cliff likes to say. My dad's been saying that for a while. It just falls off your body, so it's just cells. But we know that's not true. These far, far left liberals who are comedians will make this argument in a way where they know it's ridiculous. That's why they're bashing it through their humor. But then at the end of the day, they'll still stick with it because they'll say, you know what? It's impinging upon my freedom. My freedom. And my freedom, my personal autonomy has to win the day. But Christians are not off the hook. Christians who just condemn abortion and just leave it there, that is wrong. Christians should be getting into part of the process of helping adoption sources, resources, because oftentimes that's not the case. So now all of a sudden you have a crack baby, and then you have all of a sudden 6 of them, which a single mother is taken care of in the inner city. Okay, Christians, you gotta help out. You gotta help out. And so I'm not standing here just saying it's wrong, but you don't need to do anything about it. Now, Christians should be on the front lines. They have been in the past, fortunately, in many ways they are still today. So that's how you start to think through it. But in the cases of rape, that is very hard, and yet I would still say it was not that baby's fault. And that baby still has innate value and worth, and bring that baby into this world. In the case of mothers, I would save the mom's life first before the baby. And that's tremendously painful, and I've seen it many times.
Does Malachi 3:10 apply to us? I don't know about y'all,
Yeah,
but
read it, yeah.
yeah. Well, Malachi 3:10 essentially says that the Lord wants you to test Him with your offering, right?
Mm-hmm.
See that I will not fill your barns and grains up to the point where you can't store it.
Right.
If you give your offering to me, I don't have it memorized. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But when I was watching George Janko's podcast once, and I mean, I know he's a good friend of y'all's, but I kind of took this, it kind of resonated to me whenever George said that he promises, or almost like he guarantees, that you will be wealthy if you give more, right? To me, I don't know, it at first it kind of resonated with me. I was like, that's awesome, right? But now it's starting to sound more like prosperity gospel, and I kind of wanted to get your opinion on like whether Malachi 3:10 still applies to us today or just the Israelites of that time. And what do you think about like prosperity gospel?
Great question. Okay, so there's blessings and curses in the Old Testament. Israelites, typically when they were obeying God, they were getting blessed. They absolutely were getting blessed. But then all of a sudden when they turned away from God, they were getting cursed. Strongly cursed. They were being swept up into Babylonian captivity is one of the examples. They were losing 30,000 of them in 1 Samuel 4 and 5 to the hand of the Philistines. So blessings and curses, there was much more, like you said beautifully there in Malachi, this direct understanding of you do wrong, you're going to get punished, you're going to get cursed. You do right, you're going to get blessed, and God's going to use you ultimately to go to the promised land. And that's why so often when there are other civilizations in the way, there's holy war. Typically that civilization has been doing something very wrong. I don't know any examples where they attack a holy people who's doing great good and just slaughter them, right? So there is that incredible difference there that we look at that we don't see in the New Testament. Because you're exactly right with your type of thinking. Jesus Christ lived a pretty sinless life. I think he was the epitome of all goodness. Did he get blessed? Did he get health, wealth, and wisdom? He got some wisdom, but he didn't get health and wealth at the end of the day. And so the prosperity gospel you got to be very careful with. I don't outright disagree with every point prosperity gospel. Folks, I mean, we have many people who have come through our church who've been that way. No, when you are serving God, when you're sacrificing for God, when you're tithing, oftentimes God blesses you in different ways. Oftentimes, it's through you, other people see your generosity. That oftentimes happens. That's so frequent that it benefits them so much, where they want to change their lives and live for God and live for others. But no, I don't think there's a one-to-one correlation, especially anymore today, which is I'm going to give away $5,000, which is 80% of my bank account, and now all of a sudden God's going to give me $100,000. I don't get that in Scripture, and not even in the Old Testament do you get with the blessings and curses a direct type of understanding of, here it is, do this and you will get this. Because even look at Job. Job had some serious suffering, and I don't remember anything he did wrong, but then God does bless him at the very end. So there's total breakdown without him doing anything wrong, but then yes, eventually he gets blessed. But again, that's not because he all of a sudden started stopping questioning God. No, he wasn't questioning God in the beginning. Romans 8:28, God works together those things for those who love him. People get that wrong. God works together all things for those who honor and love him. That includes suffering. That includes how you worship him well. He's working all things together for those who love him. So it's not a prosperity gospel. But I like what George says, because you're right. He does go with that line of thinking sometimes where it's, yes, if you follow God, oftentimes things will work out very well because that's the correct fabric of the universe. Live in line with him, and you will experience blessings. Turn from him, live a sexually promiscuous lifestyle, that will come back to bite you in the butt, usually, once you get married.
Right, well, in Malachi 3:10 it says, God tells the Israelites to test him with their offering.
Right.
See how much I'll bless you if you give me your offering, if you give me your tithe, right? We are to test him with our offering. And obviously there's no other verse in the Bible that says to test him, but that is the only one.
Right.
Are we still to do that today?
Right.
To God?
So often you're right, when we get testing, it's don't test the Lord your God.
Right, yeah.
And so, again, we got to be careful with that word testing, though. Is Malachi really talking about test God and just see how much great wealth he's going to give you if you really tithe in a certain way? You can't take one verse and form an entire theological position around that one verse. A lot of guys have been coming out here and saying, we're going to take one verse when it comes to baptism and say you have to get baptized in order to get to heaven. Got to be careful. I would always say, and I always learned this in Hebrew and Greek, every professor said, do not take one verse. Never read one Bible verse. That's the line. Never read a verse. Always read context and always bring other verses into play. Yeah, great question. Absolutely.